Welcome to Season 3, Episode 53. Hey, it's Herbie's number. This is the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our Qatari Grand Prix. I think I hopefully said that right, or Qatar Grand Prix. It was supposed to be the Australian Grand Prix, but it's not. It's whatever that race is, race review. You've got Andy, and I am working with John tonight. It's just the two of us, so we're going to not dynamic duo, but we're going to duo this thing. John, how we doing?
I'm doing good, man. It feels back to the times of 9 a.m. races here in the States. So got my fresh cup of coffee.
Yep.
Because it's going to be
I got my caffeinated beverage this time.
Yeah. Between the episode and the editing for both of us, it's going to be a long night with work early in the morning. But yeah, it's I'm doing good. It's the race was more entertaining than I thought it might be, and after a couple laps, I wasn't sure, that we were going to get much of a race, but it turned into something at least, so I'll take it.
Yeah, I think I was pleasantly surprised that there was a slightly more drama than I would have expected. We'll get into what caused some of that late, especially drama late for a lot of drivers, but we'll get all into that. So you can find our show, just as a reminder, on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and now YouTube. Please do see our link tree in our show notes. If you'd like what you see on YouTube, please click that subscribe button. If you like what you hear on Apple Podcasts, please also do us a favor, give us a 5-star review. All that does is help us get to more people better. It says that you like it. It helps the algorithms, and that's what we're all up against it here as content creators. So if you guys would like to do that, we would be most appreciative of that. You can email our show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. You can find our beautiful website at www.outlapf1.com, where you can learn all about us and our bios and all that good stuff. If you are new to this season, and boy, have you found it a really good time to come on as a new fan, please do check out our F1 for Beginners episode. It is Season 3, Episode 6. It is soup to nuts, everything about the sport we love and the sport we love to talk about, Formula One. If you're thinking about attending a race next year and you may be possibly thinking about going to COTA or Miami next year, please do take a listen to our COTA Experience and Global Motorsports Survey. It's Season 3, Episode 47. That episode is really interesting and helpful for you. I hope so. Anyway, all about our experiences at the 2021 U.S. Grand Prix. For Relapped with Deanna, our co-host, who unfortunately is not on. She's stuck on a tarmac somewhere. She's trying to transport herself, probably going home for Thanksgiving. So we hope safe flight and get everywhere safe. Deanna, her Qatari Grand Prix race reaction is now up on YouTube, so please go check that out. I haven't had a chance to view it quite yet, but we'll do so right after as we're rendering audio and doing all our editing. So that's usually my evening appointment. Just as also a reminder, the Outlap F1 Nation, please continue, if you'd love to continue to step up. We've had a bunch of people do that. We do want that sign. We want Fernando Alonso. He was on the podium today. We want him driving over your name if he happens to go wide at Turn 3 in Zandvoort next year. So please feel free to find our link in the show notes. $1, $5, whatever you'd love to do is great. I hope everyone has enjoyed some of the enhancements we've been able to do, highlight reels, sound effects, all sorts of fun stuff. It's really interesting to kind of dig and dive into all that. So, and that's all possible because of you guys. So we are truly, truly grateful. Every dollar we get goes back into the show. Guarantee it. Just as a final reminder, please, the holidays are coming. Please feel free to take advantage of our 20% off and free shipping from the good folks at Manscaped. Good products. They work. They're awesome. So please feel free to check that out. So, headline of the day. John, now that we got all of the particulars out of the way, and we have more particulars, it seems like every time I do that, but it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
What is your headline of the day, maybe of the weekend?
For me, I guess it would be that MotoGP makes a decent circuit.
Yeah.
Again, it'll be interesting to see, if they keep this track long term, if they end up building another one, and what the new cars will be. But for a track that basically only has one-ish overtaking spot, it actually turned into a decent race, like I mentioned earlier. And then the second headline for me is Red Bull continued to make me embarrassed to be a Red Bull fan. I've had to put my Red Bull gear off to the side right now.
They're showing you a part of their anatomy.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, it's giant, it's round, and it's red this weekend. So there you are.
Yeah, I don't mind the complaining on track. I expect teams to do that and to take full advantage, like Mercedes attempted to do last week and, try to get their case presented. I expect all teams to do that, in any sport. But the off-track shenanigans, the comments about stewards, the allegations of doping from their competitors, just outrageous slander that seems to go completely unpunished is getting a little ridiculous. And like I said, we could do much worse than Lewis Hamilton as the face of the sport. It's going to be a very different regime, I think, when he decides to leave. And I'm not sure I like the way it's heading. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for us. But I'm a little disappointed in some of our competitors this week. Well, this season, honestly, in a few regards.
Fair enough. My headline is, God, I'm so tired about talking about the FIA. But when they give it to you like this all week, and then this weekend, I guess we're just going to have to. Or my headline is, how about that Aussie GP? Because that's what this race was supposed to be. This was supposed to be the rescheduled Australian Grand Prix that wasn't. So we have a Qatari Grand Prix that was. I kind of missed the Australian Grand Prix, but this one actually wasn't bad. So we're going to hop into that.
What do you mean, Andy? You don't like incidents that aren't investigated, that then are appealed, that then decisions can't be made in a timely manner, and then yellow flag issues that can't be decided until
the next day. And then we had grid spots that were literally changing on the fly. Yeah. Because apparently we can't
pack yourself,
line everybody up. And, it was just the basics of it.
Yeah. It was a little
This weekend was just, it was just facepalm. I just kept, every time I would have to go, is this real? Can I tweet it? That annoyed me.
You never know these days.
Well, and that's the other thing. Well, we'll get to that when I get to my awards and all of that, because I have a special place for people who do that type of thing. But anyway, we actually did have a qualifying session. There was actual running on track, but that did dictate a heap of Twitter refreshing. So we'll get into the qualifying recap really quickly. Going out of Q1 in P20, he's his familiar spot, Nikita Mazepin, and it was over 2 seconds behind his teammate today. So he did not have a very good weekend. He had some chassis issues and did not run at all, I think, in FP2. And then when he did try to run in FP3, the car died. So I think he's happy to be done with Qatar, at least for now. So
maybe he could have gone he was only 2 seconds behind Schumacher.
Only 2 seconds.
For dead last. Maybe he could have gotten it to 1.5 seconds, perhaps, if he had done some running. I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, I leave it there.
Apparently need to play some more F1 2021. And
in P19 was the aforementioned Mick Schumacher, P18 Antonio Giovinazzi, P17 Nicholas Latifi, and in P16 was Kimi Räikkönen. Advancing into Q2 but going no farther, in P15 was George Russell, P14 Daniel Ricciardo, P13 Charles Leclerc, P12 Lance Stroll, and in P11 Sergio Checo Perez. So as you can see, we have some people out of position on this grid. Going into Q3 from 10 to 1. This is as they qualified, not how they lined up, because this is pre-penalty. In P10 was Sebastian Vettel, P9 Esteban Ocon, P8 Yuki Tsunoda, P7 Carlos Sainz, P6 Lando Norris, P5 Fernando Alonso, P4 Pierre Gasly, and we will talk about Gasly in just a second. P3 Valtteri Bottas, P2 Max Verstappen, and in P1 with a lap time track record 120.827, which was 0.4 faster than the nearest competitor. That would be one Lewis Hamilton. Boy, so we had this incident that happens at the end of Q3. Pierre Gasly, who had an awesome weekend up to this point, was on his final flyer. part of the issue with this Qatari circuit, because it is so heavily factored for MotoGP, is that it has very low curbs, but it also has some tire-killing curbs. So that was kind of their natural way of maintaining kind of track limits. I'm sure it works really well for the bikes, but F1 cars, boy, that thing was a car killer. So he ran over, I think it was a set of curbs right at turn 15, which is the second to last turn. Destroyed his front wing. He then runs over the front wing. He suffers a major puncture, pulls off to the side. And of course, when that happens on a last flying lap, what normally is expected to have come out, yellow flags. And some of that did happen. And some drivers went past yellow flags. So, as we found out later on Sunday, we had 3 drivers summoned to the stewards. The stewards decided to then take a 18-hour break and not really do their investigation until Sunday morning. So we had Max Verstappen, we had Valtteri Bottas, and we had Carlos Sainz all get summoned to the stewards after the qualifying session. Verstappen was ended up handed a 5-place grid penalty for violation of double yellow flags. Bottas was handed a 3-place grid penalty for violation of a single yellow flag. And Carlos Sainz, his determination was no further action necessary. Yikes. John.
Yeah.
Help me out here.
It's a lot to take in. Yeah, I mean, it was weird. Like on the broadcast, it went double yellow, green, yellow, and then it kind of, I think it may have gone green again, perhaps, like as kind of everybody was going through. So it kept flip-flopping at least twice back and forth, like in the matter of a very short period of time, all within basically the drivers being in that final sector. So what we didn't know, obviously, at the time was where everybody was. We didn't have the track map. We knew Hamilton got through it. I assumed it was going to impact everybody else, but then you saw Verstappen actually improved his time. I think he went up another 10th faster than he was the prior lap. Bottas was slower, but it's Bottas, so who knows what's going on there. Looking back at it, I mean, as a Hamilton fan, I am happy that the racing gods have reset the universe because, I didn't get a chance to talk about it last week. I think there should have been a penalty, but I mentioned in the preview from, this week, it was a question about should there be a penalty, and I said that, the fact that there wasn't an investigation really during the Brazil race, I didn't think anything was going to happen, and sure enough, nothing happened of that. There was, no action was taken from Brazil. But I feel like this was kind of the racing gods resetting everything and saying, yeah, the stewards, didn't want to investigate it. But, yeah, well, let's level set it all. So while I'm happy as a Hamilton fan that Max got a 5-place grid penalty here, from looking at his onboards, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I guess their reasoning behind it is he saw Gasly with sparks flying, and he should have backed out. But, to tell a racing driver on a hot lap, if you don't see yellow flags, I don't know. I don't know any driver that's really going to back out there. So Vettel came out, in over the weekend too, and he said that he thought the flags were removed quickly to allow Verstappen to get through there, and a little bit of conspiracy theories thrown out there to allow Verstappen to complete his fastest lap. I don't really think that's what happened, but the whole thing with it being, yellow, green, yellow in a very short period of time, you got drivers going through. I don't know if I necessarily agree that Verstappen at least should have been penalized for it. It seemed hit or miss to me. So yeah, I don't know your thoughts on that.
I mean, this was weird because you had the broadcast open, and I did go back and review it, and it did show that kind of yellow, green thing. The official timing that I had open while I was watching the qualifying quickly flashed yellow flag, and then it disappeared, and then it never came back. So, and again, from my perspective, I was watching Lando Norris's final flyer lap. His engineer comes on and says, yellow flags, I forget, main straight, and then track clear. And almost within the same breath. So, I mean, it seemed to jive with what I was seeing on the timing and scoring. And when, the session ended, what I was expecting to happen is that if there's supposed to be any sort of yellow flag issue, we're supposed to be seeing lap times get deleted. So I was expecting, in fact, I was waiting to see Max either drop down or lap time get deleted or some graphic that says, this is what happened, because that was supposed to be the fix for this. and the fix apparently we found a scenario where the fix didn't work. That's one. Number two, all these drivers are supposed to have yellow flag telemetry automatically fed into their dash. Now, there's not that I promote these guys or anything, but WTF1 actually went through everybody's Q3 flying final lap, and none of them had yellow flags light up on their dashboard.
Yeah, I know Max didn't.
No, Max didn't. You can tell that for Bottas didn't. I think the only one that might have been Gasly, but he was the one that was sitting on the side of the road. So, I mean, if you put systems in place and then they don't work, I can't imagine. Those lap times are supposed to be deleted so that no one has any sort of incentive to go through. And when you don't see that happen, I figured, okay, we're fine. They must have said that everybody who however they withdrew the yellow flag, because he was off to the side, he was kind of out of the firing line. I didn't see that. Maybe they wanted to let all these flyers go. IndyCar has done stuff like that in the past where even when a car is off to the side, they'll let everybody come in, make their pit stop, and then throw the yellow flag. Maybe that was that type of situation going on. I don't know. But if you were going to throw a yellow flag, why these dashboards aren't lighting up, that's a huge problem. Now, this is the first time we're going to this circuit. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe stuff wasn't set up properly or tested properly.
Yeah, we know radios and stuff like that were an issue throughout the weekend. So, yeah, it's possible there was some kind of signal issue, which you wouldn't think. I mean, it's a long track on paper, but its footprint is actually not that big,
right?
Just because of the way it comes back towards its front straight after every, it loops back constantly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's not really that far of a distance, between...
And there's not a whole lot of natural barriers. It's not like that we were going around trees or big buildings. It's out in the middle of the desert.
Desert.
So, yeah, like I said, something here was just, I think at the end of the day, something was weird. Now, the part that really annoys me, why in the name of hell are we waiting 18 hours to analyze video? Does it really?
Yeah, why would you not even... I mean, you don't even summon the drivers till the next morning.
Right. Part of me is wondering if, okay, well, we saw a TV cutout here. Do we want to bring everybody back? Because it was also really, really nice that all the reaction was happening right as the TV pre-race stuff was going on. And if that's what they're doing, that's a problem for more reasons than one. And as we found out, then we couldn't... Apparently, then we still couldn't figure out how to form the grid because nobody knew what order everybody really was. There's supposed to be a provisional grid that comes out 6 hours before the race starts. Then there's a final grid that comes out an hour before the race starts. None of that happened. So we got our provisional and our real grid within about 20 minutes of each other. And the provisional grid ended up being wrong because they flipped Bottas and Sainz, which, they screwed up their own rule. And then, so literally what ended up happening was all of the equipment for Bottas and all the equipment for Sainz had to swap places in real time because they can't get this right. So, yeah. If you're gonna take the time to do it, you might as well do it right, but they didn't do it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, again, though, we've complained about this for I don't know how many decades now. There seems to be a dramatic lack of common sense in Formula One stewarding. Consistency, we know that's a joke, but common sense is also, more and more often it seems to rear its ugly head that the lack of consistency and common sense there. Because your point, if the broadcast, the graphics on screen were flipping back and forth so quickly. I mean, in my head, I saw Verstappen go quicker on a lap that I saw a double yellow flag. So I was like, that could be dicey. I think I was texting you guys before it even became a thing. Is there any news? Because I had to run out of the house right after qualifying. And so I was texting you guys trying to get updates and stuff. And but when you go back and watch the onboards, I don't see anything on his, besides Gasly's car on the front straight. That's the only time I see. But this is, when someone in the heat of the championship battle, like the Lewis Hamilton fan of me, is saying Verstappen probably got screwed out on this deal, it's probably the real deal. I mean, I didn't see anything egregious there. And like you said, I didn't see any flags. I didn't see the yellow posting boards. I didn't see anything on the dash. So,
and there's also a bunch of general confusion because which board are you passing? Because There's the start of the pit straight, which does have a green board, but that's for the weighbridge. So that is showing green unless, so if depending on where you were looking, and again, it's our first time going to this track, nobody really knows where all the cues are. So, yeah, I think it was probably a bunch of really, really unfortunate circumstances that came together. But, at the end of the day, I think letter of the law, because there's a double wave yellow, other drivers have gotten screwed out of that before, and have been given penalty points for it. So, I mean, I got it. Yeah, but it was all, as with many things in Formula One over the course of these last couple of weeks, it's in the margins and therefore subject to a lot of more interpretation than I think anybody would like. Yeah,
F1's good about sending out surveys to fans. I would love for them to actually, send one regarding topics like this and really get a view of what the fans feel like. Because, I mean, there's been more times than not that we've had to redo agendas from top to bottom because, 12 hours after a race, we get a decision on something we didn't even know happened and things like that. It's just,
and there, when you texted us, there wasn't any news. And then I literally just happened before I was going to go do something else, happened to hit refresh and went, oh, now we're getting all these investigations and bang, I got to get this out. Bang, there's this one. Bang, there's this one. And then they immediately said, there's no decision happening tonight. So you can all go home. And the meeting happens at 1 p.m. local time. The race didn't start until 5 and they didn't finish anything until like 3:30. So something's weird. I don't know what, but something's weird.
I was up about 6 hours before the race and I was like, let me just go ahead before I attempt to fall back asleep. Let me just go ahead and try to refresh Twitter real fast, see if there's any updates. And I thought for sure if we saw anything, 6 hours before the race, that they would have started coming out by then, just given the local time of the race. And I was like, oh, there's nothing here. I guess really nothing's going on. So, I was a little surprised, a little shocked when I woke up and saw your news coming through. So, it's just, in the grand scheme of things, it obviously didn't impact Max very much. I mean, who knows what could happen if he lines up P2, what could have happened there, maybe gets jump off the line, yada, yada. But, I guess you could argue it hurt Bottas worse. But anyways, in the grand scheme of things, I think it all kind of played out.
Well, it was all resolved by lap 5.
Yeah, that's true.
He was right back where he was going to be for all of the strife and all of the kerfuffle that has been this entire week of, Mercedes claim the right of review. The right of review gets rejected, not because it wasn't new, not because it wasn't relevant, but because it wasn't significant. That's the really high standard. That's pretty much how I think everybody, including Toto Wolff, was ready to have that happen. And that's another one where I'm saying that decision finally gets made in the middle of the press conference. If you're trying to create false drama, it's too
coincidental. Yeah,
yes.
It's too coincidental for it to not be intentional. You got these guys sitting side by side.
Exactly. By the way, we just heard the decision from the stewards.
They going back to the surveys, they do oftentimes talk about and ask questions regarding pre-race and post-race and lead up during the week type content. And to your point, what better way to get people to tune in an hour before the race than to have breaking news penalties happen live on television? You can no longer wait till 8:58 for a 9:00 race to wake up and throw a shirt on and set your coffee and run downstairs and get it going for the formation. You can't do that anymore, Andy, because the whole grid might flip-flop.
I was going to say it all might have changed by then. This is just, it's not how it's supposed to be done. I understand the need, I guess, to try to look at every angle and to do an investigation. If you're going to call the drivers in that evening, that's fine. We're used to that. But qualifying stuff should be done before the Sunday. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
The other thing is that I think that kind of plays well for your conspiracy theory here that you're brewing, and I like a good conspiracy theory, so I'm with you on this one. Is that I read that Netflix Drive to Survive was with Mercedes this weekend. So what better way to have some drama? I mean, I guarantee you that press conference is going to make the show.
Oh,
and then you got the whole Bottas thing, him getting a grip place drop.
John, they went to it live. Sky never goes to that stuff live. They knew what was coming. They had to know what was coming.
Oh yeah, somebody got a text message.
They even 100%. Televised the damn FIA measurements to make sure that the
we've never
the rear
seen
wing
that before
was legal.
ever. Yeah.
Ay. Anyway, all right. Let's actually talk about the race.
20 minutes into qualifying, but we had a lot to digest there. There's a lot going on.
And I still haven't had a chance to talk about the whole Brazil thing yet, but we'll get to that later.
Well, let's go lights out.
Yeah, we'll go lights out. We will actually get into the action on Sunday when we actually had our grid. Backmarkers. Lots of puncture victims here. Valtteri Bottas, he finishes in 20th. He was a puncture victim in the first retirement. Nicholas Latifi finished 19th. He did not finish. He was a puncture victim as well. Nikita Mazepin brings up the rear of the runners. He finished in 18th. He was 2 laps down. George Russell finished 17th. He was also 2 laps down, but he was also a puncture victim. P16 was Mick Schumacher, so that actually shows pretty good for him, finishing only 1 lap down. P15, Antonio Giovinazzi. P14, Kimi Räikkönen, and in P13, Yuki Tsunoda. Other than the punctures, I think the only one that really stands out to me, just because of their form earlier in the weekend, is AlphaTauri and Yuki Tsunoda dropping that far. Because they looked like that was the AlphaTauri we'd seen in testing. That was the AlphaTauri. That was the Yuki Tsunoda we saw in testing, who was turning heads and going, "Oh my God, who's this kid?" So he must love hot, dry air. That must be what gets him into the zone. But boy, to go from a really nice qualifying, him and Gasly too, when we talk about Gasly, to fall down and score no points when they really needed some. Yikes. Bit of a tough weekend. Bit of a tough Sunday for AlphaTauri.
Yeah, it is weird to see both of them look so well on Saturday and then both of them fall back basically almost an equal amount of points or positions practically. So, Gasly obviously a little bit further back even, but his whole day was a little bit interesting. But yeah, I think, considering their battle, and then who they're going up against and who actually ends up on podiums and then, well into the points. This was not the day that they needed, without a doubt. So, and then, the other thing that I want to talk about too is the Bottas thing. Obviously, we know he had the puncture. I went back, I listened to the comments after the line. I went back and looked at their press information. I know that they said they retired the car to save mileage. From what you saw, Andy, do you think that car, I know it had damage, do you think it was capable of getting a fastest lap with a brand new set there at the end?
Oh, that's tough.
It had some damage, but do you think it's capable?
Soft tires, maybe, but if it's compromised, it's really tough. And as the fastest lap finished, that would have been, I think, a tough ask.
Yeah, and I agree. It probably would have been a tough ask, but I'm a little to me, it confuses me why you would not attempt it. Because they said they retired it purely to save mileage on the engine.
I thought
we know he's had.
I thought you had to have a reason.
Right. So, they could claim the damage. There's all the little loopholes there. But I was just surprised that they wouldn't at least just try, to see if they could to steal that point back. Because 1 point may be the deciding factor
as
here.
The final laps played out, I don't think Lewis ever had a chance to respond because of that late VSC.
Yeah, Lewis did not. No. And obviously we didn't know, that the virtual safety car was going to come out and last for an eternity. It was ridiculous. If you're going to have if the VSC needs to last that long, just throw a damn safety car out and be done with it. But yeah, that obviously neutralized it and was disappointing because I do think Hamilton would have given it a shot, with fresh batteries, tires cooled off.
He could have come in for a pit stop. He had more than enough time.
Yeah, especially once Max committed to it. He definitely could have. So, certainly Max, if he's maybe he doesn't even come in, if Bottas, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but I was just surprised that they would retire him that close to the finish and not even give it a shot to try to, squeeze a point back out. So that was my only thing there with them. But, Bottas lost a gazillion positions off the start. And so he was complaining that he had no track temp. And I know I'm surprised there wasn't more chatter about it, actually, but Lewis brought him around quite slow. I think he learned something from Brazil, in that sprint race. He was like, if I just take my good old sweet time back here and then warm up my tires, then I've got an advantage here. So he kind of did sort of something similar and took his good old sweet time going around the formation lap. And I don't know if that contributed to Bottas, but he said he couldn't get any tire temp on the formation lap. And then obviously a combination of that and starting on the dirty side of the track in an area that, we know is dusty as hell. Even on the good side of the track, it's dusty as hell, this track. So, he had tons of wheel spin and lost tons of positions. But once he got into a little bit of clean air, I mean, his pace actually looked quite well. It was definitely all to play for. There's no reason, if you take away the puncture, I think it's solidly a P3 for him this weekend.
Maybe. If you take away the bad start, maybe as well. I mean, he could have been in the same position as maybe where Perez ended up. Could have been in that fight, definitely, I think, on pure pace. But I think ultimately, with the puncture and everything, he was not very fortunate about where that puncture happened. He had to go all the way around. He then goes into what I think is probably the silent assassin in all this, the gravel that is not really gravel, that is really just stones, that ended up going all over the track in several places, especially by the end of the race. There's this shot of, I forget one of the turns, and it's just covered. Like there's the racing line, and then the non-part of the racing line is just covered in these stones.
Yeah, if you're an inch off the line,
and that's actually
and maybe getting a puncture.
What I'm betting, that plus the curbs is probably why you have all of the puncture victims that you do. But yeah, I thought, once that happened, his race was done. There was no coming back. Mercedes wants to retire the car. I guess it's fine. I wasn't thinking so much in terms of fastest lap. I figured if anyone was going to go after it, it would be Lewis late. But like we talked about, basically what happens, the last 4 laps effectively get nullified by a late virtual safety car caused by one Nicholas Latifi. So we can talk about him now. He was another puncture victim. Both Williams were puncture victims. It was all the left front. That was the tire that was under the most amount of stress, regardless of the fact that these were the hardest Pirelli compounds, regardless of the fact that they were within basically the working range. I think the longest running tire is Bottas's medium, and that's at 33 laps.
Yeah.
Latifi's and Russell's were less than that, and it was a harder compound. So you would have thought it would have finished. Again, I'm kind of attributing a lot of these punctures to what I think was a lot of gravel, not normal gravel, getting kicked up, put back onto the track, and people just running over it. That combination of these curbs, which the only way to get lap time out of it was to try to take advantage as much as you could of the curbs.
Yeah, you had to just kind of kiss them almost, just a tiny little tap. I mean, I think you and I both have seen a lot of MotoGP races at this track, and I don't ever remember that even being a talking point, which blows my mind.
They're never bringing it back.
Yeah, they're never that.
By the time a bike gets into the curbs, gets into the gravel, it's crashed.
Yeah, all hell's already broke loose at that point.
Yeah.
It's just like for a guy that has ridden motorcycles, practically my entire life, I can't even imagine, going at a lean angle or even, even trying to keep it upright over those curves. I mean, to see how violent it was on a Formula One car, I can't imagine trying to do that 2 wheels. But yeah, I mean, you're right though. It's like by that time, you're pretty much in bailout mode almost if you're that far off anyways. So yeah, I'm with you on that. But yeah, and any other back markers that other than we saw Russell seemed like he was kind of off all weekend.
Yeah, I think they're struggling to kind of get to the end of this year. I think they've made their hay. They really, there's not a whole lot of huge motivation for them to take super big chances. It was nice to see him at least get out of Q1. I think that's pretty much where they're trying to fare, and if they get a crazy, chaotic race. I don't think we're going to have weather helping it out. But again, this was a track, and the other thing that you couldn't see was the wind. And the wind played, I think, a lot of havoc with a lot of teams this weekend, because Friday it was coming out of one direction, and then Saturday it shifted around. It was going basically, it was a tailwind. And then today it had shifted around almost 180 degrees again, and you were dealing with a headwind again. So, how you set up your car, I think, was really important. And Russell said it several times. The Williams, when it gets super windy or tricky, changeable conditions, it doesn't like it. So
yeah, it's not suited for that. Yeah, that's been kind of the case all year for them. So yeah, and you're right. I mean, we know that team is not bringing a mule car for the postseason test. We know financial things are tight, despite the investments that they have. But
the thing with that, the mule car, is that's on last year's budget, and that was when things were very, very tight. They have the new capital now. Even if they tried to spend it, you couldn't get the car together in time. So it was, we have the money now. What we don't have is the time to actually do it. So yeah, they are going to lose out on that postseason test. But if they can hit the ground running with next year's car, we're going to say this with a bunch of teams, what is the mystery of next year's car, and who's going to nail it and who's going to miss?
The other thing is they're pretty much, I would say, almost guaranteed to be locked into the 8th spot in the constructors. So you're right. When you go back to your point about not needing to take a whole lot of risks, let's just finish this thing out. I mean, yes, theoretically they could drop to 9th. I would say it's basically impossible for them to drop back further than 9th, because I don't think Haas is. No. I think it's going to take something truly insane for Haas to score points. And Alfa Romeo, with Giovinazzi on the way out, seems like relationships are a little weird there. Kimi obviously is on the way out. I don't think they really are threatened from behind. So to your point, let's wrap it up. Don't hit anything, or try not to hit anything, and let's just let's save our dollars for next year. So, but yeah, I don't think any other major talking points on the back markers, unfortunately. So,
all right, so we will then transition up to the midfield, and in P12 we had Daniel Ricciardo, P11 Pierre Gasly, P10 Sebastian Vettel, P9 Lando Norris, P8 Charles Leclerc, P7 Carlos Sainz, P6 Lance Stroll, P5 Esteban Ocon, and in P4 was Sergio Checo Perez. This was, I thought, probably the part of the race that was probably the most dramatic, if nothing else, was definitely, I thought, in the midfield today. So we'll start with P12. We'll start with Daniel Ricciardo, and I don't know if this was not definitely talked about in the broadcast, but he definitely didn't
explain to me what's going on, because there was no mention of this in the broadcast.
He did not have a very good day, and he did not have a very good day because apparently he wasn't fueled properly. So according to his post-race interview, he had to mega save from basically early on, and he was getting notifications on his dashboards, even like on the second or third lap, talking about fuel save. That's really, really early. So somebody screwed up pretty bad, and they basically didn't give enough fuel. So he described it as basically riding around and able to do anything for 75% of the race. And they finally let him go once they figured out that they could get the car to the end. But at that point, it was way too late. By attrition, he basically comes home in P12. He had a really, really he got really mugged at the start. He also described it as he really didn't know or couldn't see any of his marking points to know where turn 1 was. And so he then, when you don't know, you slow down, and when you slow down and everybody else doesn't, you get past. So he did not have a very good lap 1.
Did he just contribute that to the amount of dust?
Could be.
And stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be. He was in a cloud of dust. He was on the dirty side of the track, starting, I think it was P14. So, yeah, all the even-numbered runners were definitely at a disadvantage, at least on the start line, because it was ridiculously dusty. So, yeah, not a good day for Danny Rick. Doesn't help out the team at all. We'll talk about Lando in a minute. Or do you want to talk about? Can I talk about Lando now? Just get the
let's go and talk about
Lando. So we'll talk about Lando. He had himself a really nice qualifying lap, qualifying P6. He moves up to P4 with the Verstappen and Bottas penalties. So he had himself a pretty good starting position. Makes it through lap 1 this time. Hey, we actually had a McLaren get through lap 1. That's the first time in 3 races. Progress. So he's basically around P4, P5 in relative position. He had gone he went really long on the soft tires. He actually made that last. He actually looked like he was going to make a one-stopper work. However, on lap 50, even though his set of hard tires had the least amount of age of anybody, he is victim to a left front puncture. Comes in, he actually was ridiculously unlucky and lucky at the same time. Unlucky to have the puncture, but lucky as to where on the track he had it, because it was basically right at pit in, and he was able to dive in. Still managed to maintain at least a couple points, but it's frustrating. He probably deserved better. Probably would have finished P4, P5 if not for the puncture, but he was not the only one to have that happen. He was very critical of Pirelli in the process of tire selection and all that, but I don't really know what else Pirelli could have done. It was the hardest compound, so...
Yeah, we brought the hardest things we had, so
I don't really know what else you can do other than be frustrated by it. Obviously, my rooting interest was incredibly frustrated by it, but there's really nothing you could do. They lose ground on P8 and P7. Those are the Ferraris. Charles Leclerc finishing 8th and Carlos Sainz finishing 7th. Leclerc's race, kind of a bit of a damage recovery. Had some really odd pace in qualifying. They really couldn't explain it. All of a sudden, he's down in 13th. It was revealed later he had a crack in the chassis that he was allowed to change prior to the race, like for like. So it was okay. He was able to start in his original qualifying position. And Carlos Sainz, I think, just again, a solid race. Nothing all too flashy. Ferrari's finishing basically in formation. P8, P7, it's not great considering where they've been, but it's solid. It's 10 points. And it basically shuts the door on the P3 Constructors battle.
Yeah, there's 39 points, give or take, 39 and a half, something like that, between the two right now. So, yeah, I mean, like we were talking pre-race or pre-episode, even if Lando doesn't have the puncture, it's still
they would have gained 3. They would have made it 29.
It's still a pretty terrible day. For McLaren. It's weird though, we talked in the weeks leading up to this race about who would have the advantage, Ferrari versus McLaren at this track. And I think we both said we thought McLaren on pace would have it. If Danny Rick qualifying wasn't great either, but he lost a bunch. I mean, where do you think, if you take away the issues, do you think that it would have come true that, with what you saw on track? I know you follow Norris, on the boards, things like that. He probably would have finished in front of the Ferraris.
He would have. He would definitely have finished in front of the Ferraris. He would have. The only question that I had left when the puncture happens is I didn't think Ocon was going to catch him. I thought maybe Perez could. So he was running 4th at the time. He would have maybe dropped to 5th. That would have been probably it. Barring, assuming he's able to hang it out, make that one stop work, and get to the end of the race. And again, I would think his puncture was probably more debris than even curbs, because it wasn't like he ran over a curb all of a sudden, because he was in a straight when it happened. And on all these punctures, there was no warning.
Yeah, there was nothing. Yeah, you going back and watch the replay, there's no moment you're like, aha, that's the one. It wasn't like Gasly. Where it's clear and obvious.
Right, you could see
as to what
the wing shatters into a million pieces and it goes everywhere.
And that's the thing is, I know Norris is frustrated, but like we said a minute ago, Pirelli brought the hardest tires that they make for this.
And this
season.
is this race was not on the calendar to start the year. It's almost a teething problem, I guess, for the track. And something that they may have to fix if they choose to come back here.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can have the best tire in the world, but if you throw jaggedly sharp stone on track, and not just one, but
lots of
hundreds of them, it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is and how hard the tire is. That's a recipe for disaster. Yeah. So, is that just the nature of racing in Qatar? And with every track, it's all about, it all comes down to environmental things. What's the track built on? So we talked about, back in Coda, how much that track is sunk, and why it's so bumpy because of the nature of what it's built on. But, and you can't change that. I mean, I guess you could, but
you could try.
In the Middle East, they're quite rich. I guess they can do whatever they want. But
careful,
in realistic terms,
they may build an indoor one before you know it.
Hey, I mean, why not?
Brazil
right?
had the indoor paddock, which I thought was actually pretty cool. By the way, I thought that was a cool feature.
I think we should. Yeah, why not? They're talking about building a new one anyways for the official 10-year deal part. So why not go crazy and go all out in it? But yeah, so it's disappointing, for McLaren. Like I said, I think that I guess it's not mathematically over, but it's
all but
pretty
over.
Much. It would take a rather significant.
There would have to be
some
serious reliability happen to the Ferraris, and McLaren would have to be super on it at the right time in order to take advantage of it. So I mean, even if they were to get P5, P6, which is legitimately, I think, where this fight is, those are really the positions they're going after, because if the top four all do what they're supposed to do, that's where they're going to finish. The math doesn't work. There's only 2 races left. So.
There's just not enough points, mathematically speaking. So, yeah, it's pretty much over there. Switching gears real fast. I mean, Aston Martin. I mean, to see Stroll in P6, even Vettel getting a point there, as well. And granted, he was a lap down, but I was shocked to see just how decent the green machines were working this weekend.
Particularly Stroll, and particularly after his qualifying, where he was quite demonstrative in the car and screaming the car is SH-T and all that other stuff. That's not a way to get yourself really endeared to your mechanics, Lance. I hate to tell you.
But the thing is, like, if the mechanics don't like him, Daddy will just replace him. You gotta fake it till you make it.
It's just so annoying. Like, he was being so demonstrative about it, and I just don't like that. But
I can't stand it.
Heck of a recovery. I mean, to finish in 6th place, it's good, solid points. They finish the day with double points with Stroll in 6th and Vettel in 10th. And Seb, just that, I guess he's going to probably be one of the winners or close to one of the winners in that overtaking award. And it just goes to show the difference between, for Aston Martin, more so than I think any other team, the difference between qualifying pace and race pace, and that they just don't jive with each other.
Yeah. I think Alonso is technically leading that fight right now, but it's close. But yeah, I mean, this was like a 2019 type Stroll race. Bad qualifying. He's always been a Sunday driver, and that seems to have changed. In the last year and a half or so, his qualifying. When the car has not been complete garbage, has been pretty decent. So yeah, it was impressive. And then lastly, I mean, you gotta obviously we'll talk about the other one on the podium in a minute, but Ocon. Told to defend like a lion. And I don't know if he quite got that. It might have been like a ferocious kitten for a minute there. He did fight back. I will give him credit for that.
He did
try. I think, he got past. I think there was that short straightaway before, I think he finally had to give up on it. And my guess is that he was just holding that overtake button and just completely drained what little was left of that pack in hopes of staying side by side. And, once he lost, going into that corner, the pack's empty. It was like, okay, wait.
The fact that at least he even took it to the next straight, I thought was even interesting.
Right? Yeah,
because you could tell. Like, I think you're right. He was going to drain the battery of whatever it had, because normally that's move done, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was fun, and oh, look, he's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw the initial move that it got passed, I'm like, well, that was comical. Not quite like a lion. But yeah, I will give him credit, though. He made it more interesting because it looked like he was just going to get blown by on the straight. So, it all plays out. Every little bit helps. That's why we get Bottas so much hate on this one, because we needed him to fight like a lion a few times. And I feel like he just puts the 4-way flashers on and waves people by sometimes. So, good on Ocon. Little payback. Alonso obviously, defended like a lion in Ocon's victory, a while back. So it was nice to see him be able to return that favor.
Well, I mean, it was, and team objective was ultimately achieved. And, we'll talk about it here, I guess, too, but what a weekend for Alpine. When we get to the point totals, you'll see exactly how great a weekend this really was. This was like the equivalent of their Monza, man. I mean, they just came out. They did not miss. The opportunity presented itself. It presented itself for both of the P5 constructor combatants this weekend in both AlphaTauri and Alpine. Alpine seized it. AlphaTauri clearly did not.
Yeah. Well said.
All right. So, other than talking really quickly about Sergio Perez, he does finish fourth, 12 points for him. Heck of a recovery coming back from P11. I thought that was impressive. He, I think, overtook more cars on the track than anybody. Because every time he would get up, he'd have to take a pit stop and he'd come back down, and they did a two-stopper. So Mr. Overtake, Sergio Perez, how he's not in that award, I don't understand. But anyway. So we will take a quick break. We will re-rack. We'll pay some bills. We'll come on back, and we'll talk about a very interesting podium. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 53 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. It's our Qatar Grand Prix race review. You've got Andy and I'm along with John, and we are up to our very interesting podium. So we'll just take off the mystery right now in P3. First podium since the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2014, Fernando Alonso. Old is still good in 2021. In P2 was Max Verstappen, and in P1, very, very dominant performance was Mr. Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, you've got to mention there on the show. Well, I guess let's talk about Alonso first. I mean,
yeah,
it's funny that like this whole week, I feel like on Twitter, Reddit, all the major sources, I feel like Alonso was getting a lot of garbage, a lot of hate this week about, perhaps he should, he's got a podium capable car and he's not doing anything with it. I saw all kinds of, which I thought was, I don't really agree. I mean, got a podium today, but I don't necessarily agree that on a week-to-week basis he has a podium car.
The Alpine has not shown itself to be a podium-capable car.
Yeah, so I was a little surprised by just how many random comments I saw about that. But then just a perfect timing of all things to see Alonso P3. Yes, there was probably some help with the Bottas, doing Bottas-like things and yada yada. We had the penalties that set things back and kind of reset the order. But I mean, he made a really strong recovery move right there in the early laps to get himself up there. Obviously, you knew he was going to put up much of a fight against Max. It's not his battle. And honestly, he's been kind of vocal that, I think he's kind of helped, I think he's willing to do whatever he can to help Max actually beat Hamilton. I don't know if he jokes when he says things like that or not, but I didn't expect for him to put up much of a fight against Verstappen. He really didn't there. He just kind of maintained his line and let Verstappen do his thing. But again, in the grand scheme, that's not their fight. You could see after not that many laps, the gap that Hamilton and Verstappen had on the rest of the field was shocking.
Oh, it was gargantuan.
It felt like a mile. I mean,
this is what if nobody remembers the Vettel Pirelli era, that's what this felt like. After lap 1, he's 1.8 seconds clear. I went, well, this is over. that question is settled. I know what's going to happen there, irregardless of what Max does. He's not overcoming that, because if that's the pace, you pack it up, pack it in, we're done.
Yeah, you could see it, just like you'd see Hamilton go by, and then it was 6-7 seconds pretty early in. Here comes Verstappen. And then you just have that shot going down the front straight, and you wait.
Of the two of them.
And you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And finally, here comes P3 around. It was – I agree with you, though. That's exactly what Vettel did for so many years. Get more than a second out before the DRS before the DRS was enabled, and then he would just drive off into the sunset, which is pretty much what, basically the equivalent of what Hamilton did today. So, and just maintain gaps. But, yeah, I mean – like I said, Alonso made a nice little, challenge there early on. I think that was crucial to kind of setting up his entire day there, making sure he secured that spot. I think it was Gasly there on, was that lap 1 or 2 at the latest? But yeah, I mean, after that, it was just maintaining pace, they had great pit stops. The team as a whole did phenomenally. I don't think Perez, look at the math. He certainly was closing that down there, but I mean,
It would have been it would have taken a
that would have been
gargantuan effort.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I'm not
once
sure
Red
Hamilton's
Bull,
closing that gap.
and once Red Bull made the decision when they saw all the punctures to two-stop both their cars, Alonso was basically really the only guy who made the one-stop work, and they were telling him really early to stay off the curbs, you know, and to preserve those tires, and he made it happen. So, you know, if for nothing else, that's racecraft, that's experience, all of that beckons when you're in that position. You know, I did love the radio message, tell Ocon to defend like a lion, because I wanted to know what that actually meant, and if it had a shield or something like that included in it as well.
Well, you know, I think, you know, right after that you hear the radio message to Ocon. It would have been funny if they had said that, actually, defend like a lion. I would have cracked up. But, you know, they were like, elbows out, get your elbows out. We got to defend. I mean, yeah, he wasn't challenged much throughout this race, which I think certainly contributed to his P3, but that's through no fault of his own. He was starting in the right position he needed to be. He made the move early on they needed to be, and then he maintained, you know, pace throughout and kept himself out of trouble, worked his way, you know, cautiously, but, you know, in an appropriate manner through lap traffic. There's a lot of that this weekend. Yeah, I mean, a hell of a drive. I mean, you know, we've said from the beginning of the season when he was coming back that the guy can drive the wheels off anything on planet Earth. So, you know, it's sad that it's taken this long for, you know, but, you know, he clearly has pace. Like, he hasn't forgotten how to do this.
It's the first time I've heard him genuinely happy with both the car, the track, and everything since he came back. You know, he's kind of outdriven that car, I think, today, just where they were qualified and where they were lining up. I think that's really what was in the car, and he just guided it to the end. Now, he had help, like you said, and a lot of when you know, there's new people on the podium or different people on the podium than we're accustomed, that's usually part of the story is there's help. But
hey, that's racing. Any given Sunday, right? You show up. That's why we race, because you just don't know. And you can get all the help you want, but if you don't execute, if you outbrake yourself, you lock up and destroy a set of tires, it's all for nothing anyway. So you still got to execute. So
absolutely,
yeah. I think that's great. So Andy, I got to ask you. So beginning of the season, you said you predicted about 6 months before Alonso started doing Alonso type things, as far as attitude, comments, like Alonso first, team second type moves, which we've clearly seen in the past. Do you think is that coming out? Have you seen that? Do you think, or is he just, you know, is he like, what's the old saying? You don't know what you have until you lost it. You know, that old phrase. Did he just truly miss F1 that much, and he's just genuinely excited to be here now? At least publicly.
That's definitely the persona he's trying to do. I can't speak to what he says in a debrief. I don't think he's calling his Alpine Renault engine a GP2 engine or anything like that, you know, behind closed doors. And I haven't heard any rumblings about it. I think he's happy to be here. I think he knows that his F1 lifespan is kind of coming to its end. And I think he's just trying to grab whatever good memories he can still have. I don't think, you know, we're going to have this massive reset. If Alpine can somehow hit and start really fast, and maybe then he can start to sniff a championship, maybe then all that stuff comes out again. But until that happens, I think he's kind of in his Zen place. And I just think he was like, that was like I said, the happiest I've heard him since the Ferrari years. Easy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we don't know what's behind closed doors, but publicly speaking, I mean, when Ocon got his victory, you know, Alonso was the first one there to congratulate him. You know, lots of smiles, lots of good praise.
No, he also knows that there's no threat from Ocon.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't a Hamilton situation here.
No, it's not. It's not like this guy is going to come in and challenge me for a world championship. It's
this rookie's not coming in and making a move on me on turn one, lap one of the first, you know, race of their career. So that's a good point. So Yeah, I'm happy for them. I mean, I've been an Alonso fan for a long time, and obviously I, wasn't real happy during the Hamilton eras for a little bit there. But overall, I genuinely like the guy. I love seeing him, do some IndyCar stuff. I love the World Endurance Championships, the car stuff. I mean, I just genuinely, I cheer for the guy. I want him to do well. So it's nice. I think in a season where we just had so many different mix-ups as far as drivers and teams go, it would have been a shame, I think, if we had gotten through the season and Alonso hadn't had, a moment up on a podium somewhere. So I'm glad we can add that to just the phenomenalness, I don't know if that's a word, but of the season that we've had. So
the crazy nature of this season has one more branch in it.
Yeah. So,
and good for him. I mean, exactly. Like I thought, again, Alpine had the opportunity presented itself. They did not miss.
Yeah,
and that's in the pit stops, and that was in the driver. So all good for them.
Speaking of pit stops, the transition is over to Verstappen. His first pit stop was a 2.2, which is, considering the new rules, is blazing fast. His second pit stop was a 2.1.
Yeah, I was going to say that rule. Yeah, the teeth of that rule is gone.
Yeah,
congratulations.
I mean, on paper, that we should never see a 2.1 second pit stop with these rules, and it took them a handful of races
2 months,
to get basically right back where they were, within a tenth of where they were before, pretty much. It's unbelievable just how, goes back to this whole rule was stupid to begin with. The best teams with that figure out, use data and
I want to see that 1.88 whatever it is go down to 1.7 or 1.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just the best teams are going to rise to the top. The cream will always rise to the top, and sure enough, yes, it's slightly slower than what it was pre-rule, but it's still just incredible. And honestly, I didn't mention it earlier, but Ferrari doing that double stack, I think they were a 2.2 and a 2.4 or something like that.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I mean, good on you, Ferrari. I try to make it a point to say something nice about Ferrari at least once, just to throw it out there. But yeah, I mean that was incredible to see. I mean, we know how chaotic and challenging double stacks are, and to pull two pretty damn impressive pit stops, within seconds of each other was quite impressive. So, but yeah, what do you think of Verstappen's day? This felt like 2020, just Hamilton driving off and Verstappen,
first of all,
in his own world.
what 5-place grid penalty? Because that was all resolved. He made it actually a really nice move onto a probably very dirty part of the track and made it stick. On lap 1, I think he's up to third by the end of that lap, and then gets around, makes the move on Alonso there for P2, and basically then just kind of settled in, was effectively I think 8 or so seconds off of Hamilton for pretty much the entire race. There really wasn't anything he was able to do about it. I think based on where they started after the penalty, I'm pretty sure the team was as happy as they could be to limit the damage as much as they could. They did pip the point for fastest lap at the end, so it's an 8-point gap, not a 7-point gap. So that could loom large as we come down the stretch here. As I saw it in some of the Sky post race, they were saying, well, Mercedes just handed it to Red Bull up and down today. Maybe in the drivers, but certainly not in the constructors.
No,
because the constructors
right back down again.
right back down to
5 points.
5 points again. So
it's all to play for.
Yeah,
Mercedes has got to get they've got to get their crap together, man. They've got to get 2 cars solidly in the points,
and it's going to come down to. I think the constructors more than the drivers for sure. It's going to come down to the role of those second drivers and which one is more consistent at the end. Now, you do have Bottas probably on his best and freest form, since he's been around. But is it enough? I don't know.
All right, yeah, and so it's crazy when you look at it real fast. Obviously, 7 points, between first and second. Going into 2 races to go. If Hamilton wins, at Saudi Arabia and gets the fastest lap, we're tied going into the final race. if Hamilton wins, Verstappen second, it's a one. And Verstappen gets the fast lap. I mean, the amount. I mean, we're so damn close right here.
We could legitimately end up tied on points.
Yeah, it's incredible here.
And a couple questions came in. I know about what happens if they are tied on points. They do what's called count back, and I will explain exactly how that sort of works. So it's the first tiebreaker is number of first place positions. Now, if Lewis wins out, they would actually be tied 9-9 on first place positions. So then we count back again and we go to second place positions. And that I actually would have to look up. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to dig out my charts and figure out exactly who was where. But if they're tied on that, then they go to the number of third place positions. Eventually, they're going to have a difference. And I'm pretty sure.
I don't know the answer. I feel like just throwing it out
right
there,
now.
I think Max would get that second place.
Correct. I think Max has the high ground on both of the tiebreakers right now.
It's going to be, I mean, listen, we haven't had a championship battle this close since 2016. The last time it went down to the final race of the season. It's going to be interesting. The other thing is that we didn't talk about, and I didn't even I swear I don't know how I missed this, Andy, but Hamilton not using the same motor that he used in Brazil. Was that 100% confirmed? I saw it on a few different reports.
It was in the pool. I don't know for sure, but I thought the allocation that they were using, it was not going to be that engine because they wanted to save that for the last two races because they thought Saudi Arabia was going to be high speed and so would Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. So if you're Red Bull and you know that Mercedes potentially has an even faster motor that they didn't use, which you saw at Brazil, and just the incredible straight line speed, you got to be worried going into Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia, man, is as dirty as it is.
Such
I talked
a
about
wild card.
Yeah.
And the speed for Mercedes tarmac is all straight line.
Yeah. With the tarmac
this thing has
stuff,
27 turns.
Right? Yeah. Everybody says, this is a guaranteed Mercedes victory. I don't know if it's that. I mean, I'm predicting that, yes, that Lewis will win, but I don't know if it's quite that simple when you've got dusty as hell track, fresh tarmac that's greasy as hell. Red Bull, we know, can run less downforce than other cars and still be just as fast in the twisty bits. And we know just how insanely twisty track limits, trying to enforce track limits in Saudi Arabia is going to be an absolute joke. If it's anything like the sim stuff that we've seen, it feels like you're basically going off track every corner just to maintain without hitting something. So I don't.
It's anything like this weekend where we don't do it in the first practice and then we just, we're going to try this and then
we're throw it in there.
So for qualifying, we finally decided, and the roulette wheel has decided that turn and that turn and that turn. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah, but going back to the top two here, I mean, this has been an incredible season, like we talked about. Just so many different complexities and nuances and drama and new drivers and new teams and yada yada. Just so much going on. But you think about these two to see just how. I mean, there's 140 points between Hamilton and Bottas, if I'm doing my math right. And
they're very clear.
It's to see just how close those top two are, and then the gap back. We're talking 6 races, of worth of points between, of the gap there. It's just incredible to see. And we talk about recovery drives. Verstappen, we saw, we had when he took the engine, came back and finished second in that race. We saw he took the penalty this week, and within a few laps was already back in P2. You saw last week in Brazil, Hamilton essentially getting 25 places worth of grid penalties and doing it 2 days in a row, dominating through the field and winning. This is what championships are made of. So, I mean, either guy that wins this, I mean, it's going to go down as one of the best in history. You can't say either. Both drivers are deserving of the championship. Whether you like the guys, you hate the guys, whatever. I mean, they're in a whole other class of their own, and even when they're having off week, or even when there's adversity and they're getting penalized and things like that, both these drivers have just shown once again they can come right back to the field, and damage limitations. That's what championships are made of: consistency, damage limitations. Because you're going to have those weekends where you got to take a penalty. You got to, things are going to happen. It's all about what you do. How can you make up for it? And both these guys have just shown over the last handful of weeks just how good they are. So,
well, I mean, you just look at the delta of the times today. I mean, other than, the final result is deceiving because Verstappen came in and put on the second set of tires and went for the fastest lap and was able to do that. So it looks like it's 25 seconds. These guys were, other than that second pit stop happening, I mean, they lapped all the way up to, I think at one point, P5, and then they both kind of came back down. So I think the final classification has them lapping all the way to P9. That's still crazy. I mean, the shot of them, like when they show the map and they show all the dots, the shot of them, it's them two, and the rest of it is the group way over here.
Yeah.
They were in their own time
of a mile and a
today.
half.
Yeah,
basically ahead of them.
They were in their own time zone.
So
and when we've talked about it many times too, is we never see this go all the way to the end. And if you're not deriving some sort of enjoyment from that, I really don't know what else to give you. I mean, I understand both fan bases are super passionate. Both fan bases, love their respective guys, but man alive, let's just watch what happens and appreciate it for what it is. These two guys are going at it, and it's ultimately throughout all the rhetoric, it's going to come down to ultimately what happens on track.
Yeah.
So let's just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and who knows? We may not get this battle next year.
No, you could have one. You could have one team or both of these teams miss.
Yeah.
Miss a design or have a flaw in the car next year, and they're not doing this.
I mean, you hope if you're a fan of F1, this is clearly the two best guys on the grid by a long stretch. I think if you're a fan of F1, you hope that both these teams hit it good next year and that this battle continues until Lewis calls it a day. They might flip flop some championships along the way. So, but it's just you got to sit back and enjoy it. This is your first year watching. I mean, you're in for literally a top 5 season here in F1 history. So enjoy it. Get your popcorn, put your feet up, and just soak it in because it's incredible.
20 rounds, or this is 19, right? This is round 19. We're going to be 20 rounds in, and it's still all to play for.
Yeah.
This does not happen in this sport.
2019, I saw Hamilton wrap it up at COTA live in person. That's been a typical season for a while. And even during, we had a couple of close ones there in the Vettel eras, but I mean, he was pretty dominant for a chunk of there as well. So yeah, just soak it in, enjoy it. Cause this is going to be a season that we're going to be talking about when we're old and gray. Well, I'm already getting old and gray, but when I'm older and grayer, this is
Don't
one of those
remind
you're gonna,
me.
Yeah, you got a birthday coming up, or just had one.
Had one.
Yeah, you're close. You're approaching a more rounded number than I am, but I'm not too far behind you. But yeah, I mean, this is gonna be one that you're gonna be telling your kids, or you're looking back and say, yeah, you remember 2021. Wow. So you'll see some documentaries about this one. I guarantee it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, one will come out next February or next March. For sure.
Hopefully, maybe not the most factual thing, but it'll be entertaining to watch.
It will be. It better be entertaining. And then we're all going to go, what? They didn't talk about this. They didn't talk about that. That episode's coming.
It needs to be. They need to double the episode count at least to try to get this season in. I don't know how. I would hate to be actually the guy editing all this because I don't know how you tell these stories in that few episodes, to be honest with you. But
exactly.
Anyways.
All right. So, John, give us our driver standings headed into the last 2 rounds of this incredible championship.
So, Verstappen, 351.5. Hamilton, 343.5. Again, all to play for there. Remember, 7 points between first and second, plus you got a fastest lap possibility there. So it could literally be tied going into the final race. Bottas 203, Perez 190, Norris 153, Leclerc 6th place at 152, right on the heels of Norris. I didn't think that was going to happen a few weeks back, but it is all to play for there. Sainz is right there in the mix as well at 7th at 145.5. So just about 7 points or so behind these guys. Ricardo's a decent little chunk back in 8th at 105. Gasly, 9th in 92, or with 92 points. And Alonso, definitely, I think he's solidified his P10. Unlikely to get any higher than that, but in 77 points in P10. So what about the team standings?
The constructors, some slight changes, but we will talk about them right now. Mercedes is in P1 on 546.5, followed by Red Bull, only 5 points behind on 541.5. In third place is Ferrari on 297.5. In fourth place is McLaren on 258. Fifth place, this is where we see our biggest change. Alpine on 137, now 25 points clear of AlphaTauri in sixth place. They came into this race tied. They don't leave it tied. AlphaTauri on 112. In seventh place is Aston Martin on 77, still pretty much kind of in a place of their own. Eighth is Williams on 23. Ninth is Alfa Romeo on 11. And in 10th place is still Haas F1. Only 2 more races to go with that car, Gunther. I swear to God, there's no more on 0 points.
Yeah. My buddy saw Gunther at a grocery store the other day, and I'm like, you should have just given him a hug.
Tom, it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah. It's I know he's spending most of his time in North Carolina these days, at least between races and stuff. So good
hopefully
to see.
Looking at that 2022 chassis going.
Exactly.
This one's going to be better.
Exactly.
Better be better.
It's good to see that he's close by. But yeah, maybe I'll stand on the side of the road with a sign and some encouraging words, for Gunther. Or put something funny on there, just make him laugh and enjoy, a few minutes of this lovely year that they're having there. But yeah, it'll come to an end. It'll get better, maybe.
Yep. They only got 2 more races to go, and they could just retire early from Abu Dhabi and call it a year.
Which they might very well.
They may just do.
Just run a few laps and all right, let's open the bottles. Let's get to it.
All right, so we are going to take a quick break. We will come back and we will get into your reaction to the Qatar Grand Prix. We will talk about our fan emails, and there are a number of them in our documents, so come on back. All right, you have heard our takes on the Qatar Grand Prix. It is now time for your takes on the Qatar Grand Prix. John, tell us what's in our fan emails this week.
Yeah, so the first one we had this week was from Rachel Fleming. She's a recurring all-star on the show, so we appreciate it, Rachel. She had a couple of comments this week. So she said, firstly, who do you guys think should take more responsibility for the tires going, and by going, she means imploding, the teams for pushing them beyond what Pirelli said, Pirelli themselves, or the track itself not being suitable for F1 tires, despite Pirelli bringing the hardest compound. So we'll start with that, Andy. We kind of talked about it earlier, but what do you think?
I think
combination
probably a combination of all three. I hate to do that whenever tries to pin me down.
She's like, come on, don't cop out.
Exactly, don't cop out on it. But if anything, if one is more a contributing factor than others. Pirelli was recommending 2 stops. Teams were trying to do a 1 stop, so that is kind of problematic at best. However, when they all happened as quickly as they happened on almost the same number of laps, you almost wonder if that is something systemic. But it's hard to tell. I mean, I'm sure they're going to do an investigation. They will probably come out. My guess is I think the gravel that wasn't really gravel, that probably had some shards in it, probably had something to do with it, along with the curbs that I think in order to get lap time, you had to push the boundaries of those curbs, even though they were car killers. And some guys, I think, got burned for doing it. Yeah,
I would agree with you there. I think it's a combination. And the fact that the punctures happen with tires, obviously we know Bottas stretches, but the fact that the other ones were relatively newer and happened at different ages on those tires, and the fact that they all happened so close together, to me, that stems to most likely those stones, I think. I certainly had some Silverstone flashbacks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this track was a lateral load nightmare.
Yeah,
particularly.
I think we were a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5 during the preview on that. So it's a lot of strain there, and certainly contributing to that was certainly the stones. The other question that Rachel had is, do you guys? She asked if we had the UK commentary feed. Somehow Data Croft and Martin Brundle She said the race itself had a lot of mistakes were made from them. She said, example, DC said something about Verstappen replacing Gasly in 2016. I personally was watching it with a buddy, and we were screaming at the TV. There was a lot going on, pacing back and forth, doing what normal weird guys do when we watch sports. We pace and we scream at TV. So I actually didn't notice it. Honestly, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the some of the fine details of the commentary. I was just more kind of soaking in on the stories and taking notes and all that fun stuff. But you said you mentioned something. You noticed some things earlier, but what'd you think of it? Just an off weekend?
Well, I maybe. I know David Croft was actually there and on site, so that's kind of been a change. I thought when he's had kind of off weekends, I thought it was earlier in the year when he was in basically the bunker with all the monitors, and that was what he was trying to do his job from. And I thought he'd gotten better since they'd gone back to being more on site. Sometimes people with the red light on make mistakes. I made mistakes. It happens. A lot of times you're getting notes passed to you by a producer. If the producer makes a mistake, you read what they tell you because you're trusting that person
James
knows
pulled
what
one of
doing.
those a couple of weeks ago. He pulled a Ron Burgundy right off the teleprompter.
Right, exactly. So, I mean,
it happens.
It can happen. It does happen. I'm sure Croft would, if he was doing his own personal review, would probably go, that probably wasn't right, and I may, fix that later. But they're trying to do the best they can. This is, it's 23 races for all of them too, so they get just as tired and exhausted as everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm be honest with you, I'll take the UK feed any day.
Yeah,
over what we've had in the United States previously. So
well, I love those broadcasters. But I hated the commercials and what they had to try to bend themselves backwards because of all the commercials that they had to go around. But those guys,
the guys themselves,
or Matchett and Bob Varsha back in the day, and Will Buxton were some of the best. So
yeah, they had a great deal. They were just dealing with NBC and
NBC-ness.
Yeah, what they do to motorsports, just destroy it regardless of what car is on track. All right, so thanks, Rachel. Uncle F1 just has a comment. Looks like tire deg was an important issue after all. Those cars eating alligator curbs in the lateral loads really pushed the Pirellis. Poor Williams getting bit on both cars. Yeah, I mean, of all the teams that need a little luck, Williams did not need a puncture on both. But anyways, it is what it is. These things are bound to happen. Like we said, when you go to a new track.
It'd be interesting if they wanted to come back, would they insist on reprofiling at least the curbing, if nothing else?
Yeah,
so that will be something that we'll watch for. We know they're coming back probably to this circuit in 2023. It's at that point then if they're going to go build their own, for F1 specifically, I would assume they wouldn't have those types of curbing on it.
Yeah, I would hope not. Maybe, and hopefully a little bit more runoff so we don't have a stone issue.
Yeah.
As well. Dave Doherty, always a big fan of the show. Appreciate it. He says, your thoughts on the circuit and Alonso. We talked about Alonso. Andy, what'd you think of the circuit as a whole?
I was familiar with it from MotoGP where it kind of reminded me. Again, I think it's a circuit that wants MotoGP bikes to be able to lean, and that's exactly what all of those turns are helping it do. So you get great shots of MotoGP bikes doing what they're engineered to do. I thought some of the viewing angles, or at least where they put some of the cameras for F1, was a little odd.
If I got one more fan shot.
Well, yeah,
I feel like that woman.
Different. Yes, exactly.
There was one woman in the grandstands that I feel like got more broadcasting time than half the grid.
Well, bring a British flag, and the British broadcast will put you on.
Yeah. I'm like, please, can we stop putting a cameraman in the middle of a crowd? I mean, it was weird. I only saw I feel like one helicopter shot the entire race. I don't know if he wasn't flying or what was going on. I don't really understand.
It could have been that the wind was too much. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. We did mention it was windy, so that's certainly a possibility. But yeah, I'm with you. The circuit for me, like I said in the preview, I didn't know if we were going to get much overtaking. I said worst case scenario is that we have a race that looks beautiful and we see lots of sparks and we saw more than we thought we were going to get today. we started blowing, glowing brake rotors, and you get to see the dashes and what's actually on them. You get to see colorful helmets. I mean, I was like, that's worst case scenario, and I think we got a pretty good show as a whole. So, yeah, I'm with you. I wasn't sure, not a ton of overtaking opportunities, but it did have a really good midfield battle, so I'll take that. Chicago's own Jenny Donahue says, crazy to see that the number one drivers in F1 seem to consistently outdrive their number one, or the number two drivers seem to consistently outdrive their number one counterparts. Some teams certainly need to reevaluate their pecking order. Sainz, Norris, Vettel, except for today, all three of these have consistently placed higher than their teammates. So, I mean, we kind of talked about a couple weeks ago when like black bar T-bars and yellow T-bars, and I feel like they used to make a lot of common sense, and with the realm of paid drivers and things like that, a lot of that's just been thrown out the window. We got 4-time champions that are number two drivers and rookies that are number one.
I don't know that a lot of teams make that distinction. I mean, it used to be, way in the back when you had kind of the numbering system was different, and you could tell who the number one driver was, one by your T-bar, and then two by whoever had the lower number.
Yeah, so they finished higher than the other guy.
Right. You could tell, car 3 was pretty much the number one on the team versus car 4. Okay, well, that makes sense. That's all gone out the window. I don't know that there's a natural pecking order other than more experience leading to maybe a distinction of a number one driver or how much they get paid. I think that's probably the bigger distinctor more than anything else.
Yeah, I still think that the one that kind of is I think the craziest one for me, I think is, the Mazda Schumacher. Yeah, that one too. Yeah, but I get that one just because Daddy owns the team. But the Sonoda Gasly one is, but again, a Honda, Japanese-based motor, Japanese driver, money.
It's also Red Bull Academy, so Lord only knows what makes sense there.
Yeah, true. So, yeah, it doesn't make much sense anymore, but we appreciate the question. And yeah, it's certainly, you always, beginning of the season, I certainly had to do a couple of double takes myself. Just, all right, let me make sure I remember who's who, because the T-bar is definitely, in my opinion, still the easiest way to see one driver from the other. But, let's see. Matt Polanski says, welcome to Losail. F1 is added again to MotoGP track, explaining how they would change it to better suit F1. This is ours. Leave it alone. The race had everything: gravel on track, broken wings, blowouts, and alpining. Alpining is that thing where Alpine seems as wide as the aircraft carrier, built on the backs of tire strategy gone awry. We got a podium that probably gives Lewis Hamilton nightmares. And again, that's Matt Polanski from the Red Sector MotoGP podcast. So he does know a thing or two about this track. Andy, your thoughts?
I mean, I'm more than happy to leave this circuit as for MotoGP. I don't think they should change it. If they're going to go to a new circuit, they ought to build a purpose-built one, not modify this. Don't do that, because once you start going down that way, then you're going to compromise both events. And the MotoGP racing is awesome, so I'm with you on that. I would much rather have the Australian Grand Prix than the Qatar Grand Prix, but that's just me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, leave it alone. It's a incredible MotoGP track. Let's just build another one if we're gonna be there for 10 years. So I say we build another one and make a beautiful F1 track and make a beautiful MotoGP track, and we can all live in harmony. And then lastly, we had Jamie Watson says, a question for the pod. Would you like, in similar fashion, would you like for 2023, rather than another street circuit, quote unquote, be added? Looks like the kind of track where, basically asking, would you like this track as opposed to a street circuit? Because it does look like there are the kind of battles where, they can run in close quarters, especially that midfield. We saw a lot of guys in close battles today, as opposed to, like we just said, potentially rebuilding something or doing a street circuit in one of their cities or something like that. What do you think long term, Andy?
Well, it all depends on the layout of the street circuit. I mean, if the street circuit is good, like Baku, it could be awesome. in terms of the actual racing, I think sometimes the Singapore circuit, while I like it and I enjoy that event, sometimes doesn't always give us the best show. So it depends on how you can design it. And with a street circuit, you're compromised, and what do you do, and how are you able to do it? And it's also going to matter as to what the cars are going to be able to do around it too. So I don't mind street circuits in general, other than I know it's a pain to put on those events. But if it can look good and be fun at the same time, that's the dual threat.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes Singapore so special is that it's like one of the last races of attrition, from man and machine. Everybody is pushed to the absolute brink of exhaustion and collapse and failure. The amount of body weight that these drivers lose just in fluids during that race is insane. It's almost always pushing against the 2-hour limit. Everything's hot, everything's heated up. And by the way, we might monsoon in the middle of it, and just, you're an inch from a wall. So that's what makes it crazy. So yeah, I agree. I mean, you could do a lot with the street circuit. I think if you put it under the lights in the city, at least it'll look spectacular. So, I could go either way on it for sure. But we definitely got to look at curbs if we're gonna stay here. But I don't want to change much about this track either. So anyways. But yeah, that's the questions we had this week. So thank you everyone who sent stuff in, and we really appreciate it. And certainly, like I mentioned on the preview episodes, we've been doing those as well recently. So if you got questions, comments, things leading up to the weekend, things you want to know, things you heard on the media and want more clarification on, send them over. We appreciate it. We love talking about them. Dan, you want to move on to the awards?
Yeah, let's get into it. All right, so we are apt to do. We start with our rubbish award. John, we'll start with you for this one. What you got?
I don't exactly know what yours is going to be, but you kind of alluded to something in this nature earlier. I'm still going to give it to the FIA. Just the amount of ridiculousness that's happened in the last 7 days is just, the whole thing has just been absurd. Investigations, no investigations, ridiculous delays before we get notifications, swapping of grids last second. We put out the wrong, like you mentioned, we put out the wrong, provisional lineups. It's just a lot going on here. And the lack of consistency, drivers saying that if, someone's not punished, then all bets are off, other drivers saying we don't even know the basic rules of racing anymore and what's allowed and what's not. So all of that stems with the FIA. Something needs to improve in that regard. So that's me, rubbish. And I'll give it to Mazepin for being Mazepin. What about you?
I think I'm kind of in the same vein. I think I'll save what I put it in the doc until kind of maybe my final thought, because I think it's probably better there. But I mean, just talk about like the insanity of, look, I guess I got, just to rewind it, I got what the thinking was, at least in Brazil, was we made a decision. This is our decision. We all knew what it was, whether we agreed with it or not, fine. There are other racing series that are able to do this. IndyCar does it. And yes, sometimes drivers are pissed at the outcomes, but they accept it ultimately and move on. When decisions are litigated and then relitigated and then stretched out and investigated 5 times when really nothing new is really on offer, you create exactly the chaos you got this weekend. And the fan bases are so revved up that it creates this really, really not fun environment to be in. It's exhausting to cover this when it's like this. I don't particularly enjoy trying to figure out, okay, what's this rule and who broke what and what are the potential penalties and all this other stuff. I'd rather talk about sector times and gaps and DRS zones and stuff like that. That's a lot more fun than talking about rule number 12.48J of the sporting regulations and whatever the heck that is. So we got to tighten it up. Basically, we should prioritize one of two things. One should be everybody who goes to an event should know what the result of the event is when they leave it. Good, bad, indifferent. That's the first thing you've got to commit to. And the second thing is we got to have some form of consistency, but somewhere, because it goes into that room and you have no idea what anybody's going to do. So again, to the FIA, I know they're trying to do the best that they can. I actually listened to a really awesome Twitter space earlier today on stewarding with people who knew Charlie Whiting and knew how that stuff worked. I thought it was fascinating, but God, it's just so exhausting. Get it together.
Yeah, for the American listeners out there, what's happening now reminds me of what happened in the NFL a few years ago when you legitimately did not know from play to play what would be called a catch and not a catch.
Yeah, it's about that way.
And, slam dunk, yes, 100% a catch, nope. And then vice versa. Looks like the guy basically just completely drops and somehow it's called a catch. I mean, that's what we're going through now, and it's frustrating. It was a big talking point in the world of NFL. It was a huge frustration for fans because regardless of what team you cheer for,
so you're going to get bit by it.
You're bit by it, yeah, regardless. And, the Hamilton fan in me has gotten bit, and for sure, Ferrari's been bit, McLaren's been bit, Red Bulls have been bit. It's just, it's ridiculous. So, the fans in the F1 survey said they want less stewarding involvement, but something that wasn't asked, but I guarantee you would be a big vocal talking point is consistency. Drivers want it, teams want it. And the other thing is, there's always going to be some infighting between these teams, but I feel like some of it has gotten a little outrageous this year, which has certainly contributed to some of the Twitter things and things like that going on. So I think as a whole, F1 needs to look back, and yes, some of this is fun there's a fine line between entertainment and being absurd, and we're pushing the limits there in a lot of this season. So I hope that there's some coming of the minds during the off season, and we say, listen, yes, you can do this and this, but all these public remarks are not always good for the show. So yeah, we'll see. Analysis paralysis, Andy. Did you have anybody?
Basically anybody who tried to make a one-stop and got bit by the tires because you probably should have listened to Pirelli when they said, we think this should be a two-stop race. So, yeah. My own boy included in that, by the way.
Yeah. Can you put analysis paralysis on not fueling a car properly?
Yeah, that's just a muck-up. That's just a good old-fashioned, we fucked this
I don't
up.
know if someone miscalculated or someone just didn't, hold the button down long enough to get enough fuel in the car, but I don't know. That's a big one for me. Dark horse. For me, you could easily argue driver of the day, and I think you're going in that direction too. I'll give that one to Alonso for his P3 and first podium since 2014. You?
I'm giving my dark horse to Esteban Ocon. Wasn't quite the defense of a lion, but it was still really solid day for him. P5, Alpine, again, taking the opportunity and not missing. So Esteban Ocon, dark horse for me.
Yeah, give it to the whole Alpine team. And then for me, driver of the day, with you going Ocon, I know where you're going with on the driver of the day side. I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to give it to Hamilton. It felt like a race weekend of old. Hamilton drives off into the sun, doesn't do anything wrong, dominates qualifying, dominates the race, does what he needs to do. People give him a lot of hate for that, but I think after everything that's gone through this year, I think that just further cements just how damn good the guy is. So,
well, I've said it many times. Bet against that at your peril.
Yeah, as Toto put it this week, I think I don't remember what the exact phrase it was, but they've pretty much poked the bear that is Lewis Hamilton, and
well, it took it long enough. I mean, that was the part that always confused me was what was it going to take, and whatever it was, if it was the 20 place grid drop, or the exclusion from qualifying, or the 5 places, that was self-inflicted. So that Mercedes can only look at themselves about that. But whether it was the rhetoric from the Red Bull side or whatever it was, or the crowd in Brazil, something has got him into that other gear. And I have not seen yet a Red Bull response to the other gear yet. And until that happens, this championship is going to get closer and closer and closer. Now, he's up against it a little bit with the math. He is going to have to basically win out and hope that Max has some sort of a problem, because I don't think he's got the advantage on either of the first two countbacks. So that's a problem for him. But there's enough still in his own control. The sucker's wide open as far as I'm concerned.
And if you ever need your wingman to show up at Abu Dhabi, this is going to be the year to do it, buddy. So, you're hoping, if you're Hamilton, you're just praying Bottas P2. That's what you're praying for.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's all to play for. Your driver of the day?
This is old is still good in 2021. Fernando Alonso did not miss when he had the opportunity to get his podium. It's not necessarily a race win, but it was good to see for a guy who's I know he gets a lot of guff, and he's done some things in his career that have deserved a lot of guff for, because he's sometimes been sort of foot in the mouth over the course of his career. But the dude is still the goods. It's nice to see. Just like, Helio winning an Indy, old is still good. 2021, Fernando Alonso, my driver of the day.
Nice. Predictions,
which we thought, like you teased, maybe we'll do lap times or something. So like a moron.
It sucks because if we had done lap times, the number that I had in mind, I think would have easily cemented some more points.
Well, it's easy to say that now.
Yes, but I did not throw it on the actual paper. So I thought about giving half points, like in like a tribute to Spa. But I'll take, getting out of this one with my 8-point lead. So you and Deanna are still tied at 44. James still right there with you at 42, and I'm leading the way at 52 with 2 to go. So it's all to play for in this one as well.
Yeah. So it's
I think the only thing sealed right now. Is your bet with Deanna, is that pretty much sealed or no?
Norris versus Ricardo is pretty close. I mean, Danny Rick would have to have a really good couple of weekends, and Lando would have to DNF basically.
Yeah, so that one's pretty much done. My bet with Seb and Leclerc, I'd say that one's bit.
No, that's deader than a doornail.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be making a virtual visit to Benny's Beverage Depot. Shout out if you're in the Chicago area. It's a great place to go for your alcohol needs.
Especially this week, because it is Thanksgiving week.
I'm going to be getting out the old debit card and buying a bottle of bourbon. He did say, though, that his favorite bottle of bourbon is the one that's free. So I think that the dollar amount should be irrelevant. So I might call him up and say, hey, what's your worst bottle of bourbon? And, go for that. We'll see. I don't know. I may not be that
kind. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyways, so it's all in good fun. I'll make better bets next season and maybe wait till after preseason testing before making some bets.
Let's see what the cars actually do.
Yeah, because making one before preseason testing has really bit me. So, oh well, you live and you learn, right? So, anyways, you got any final thoughts for this weekend? It turned out to be a longer episode than I probably thought it was going to be, but a lot of digesting, moving parts going on here.
Yeah, I mean, just as a final send off, I know we're gonna take finally a break. We finally get through this goddamn triple header, and for some of us, it's been a longer triple header than others. At least on my end, it's been a really long one. I've seen a lot of angst and a lot of weird stuff going around our Twitter community, and I would just kind of tell everybody, let's take a step back. Let's enjoy this ride for what it is. It's two guys going around in a race car. This isn't life or death. This isn't anything that we should be getting emotionally unstable about. I've seen rhetoric on Twitter over the course of this past week referring to what Max did to Lewis as an act of terrorism. Are you kidding me? Let's just take the tone down. It's entertainment. Let's leave it for what it is. Let's enjoy this battle. It doesn't come around very often. And however it's going to play out is going to how it plays out. Now, so I would just encourage, over the course of the holiday weekend, over the course of the next couple weeks, let's just enjoy each other's company. Twitter community can be awesome. It's how I'm talking to people talking to you now because of the Twitter community, basically. It's how I've met everybody on here. So it's an awesome place. Let's try to keep it that way. Let's just be nice to each other.
Yeah, we're all humans. We've all gone through a pretty terrible 24 months, and some worse than others. So yeah, while sports brought most of us back together, things like this can tear us apart. I'm with you. Let's, at least, it's okay, in the moment to be emotional and things like that. I get it. Your driver's emotional, we're emotional, but yeah, let's quickly take a step back and breathe.
And remember,
as I tell my 3-year-old daughter,
yeah.
Let's breathe and let's count to 4.
Right.
Because we all need it sometimes.
Just because there's a little blinking cursor that says, "What are you thinking right now?" might not be the first thing you might want to do. Just a little bit of advice.
Do what I do, and sometimes it's best to write a message and then delete it. And then if you still feel like writing it, okay, maybe. But there's many times where I'm like, yeah, okay, let me just delete that. Just pull that back. Yeah, it's like I said, like you mentioned. I mean, we've had one season like this since 2012, so they don't come around often, and they may not come around again for a while. So obviously, I hope they do, but they may not. So let's enjoy the ride.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
one for the books. For
exactly.
Sure.
So we will re-rack. We will reconvene. Hopefully in 2 weeks. We think that track in Saudi Arabia is going to get done. They released some pictures today that made it look a lot closer. So that's at least the plan for us. So we'll probably get back to you sometime next Wednesday with a Saudi Arabia preview. Lord only knows what we're going to do for lap times for that. So for John, it's been Andy, and for James and Deanna, who aren't here, as always, may all your laps be fast.